Alright, so today we got snowed out again, and we keep falling further and further behind. They're not going to move the day of the AP test because we've had 4 snow days now. So I thought I'd put together a little flip classroom lecture about the heart of what we would have talked about in class today. So this corresponds with February 10th on the calendar. Chapter 23, The Home Front, Women in the War and Japanese Internment. So real quick, we've talked about the war on the home front and how it transforms America, gets us out of the Great Depression. And when we look at Evansville, we see this as well. Evansville is going to prosper during World War II, and there's going to be a lot of industry, a lot of growth, a lot of jobs, and a lot of people coming to town. The economy is going to shift from a peacetime economy to a wartime economy. The first instance of this will come within a month of Pearl Harbor for Evansville, when Chrysler, who had been producing Plymouth automobiles, gets a contract to start making military armaments for the government. This is typical of what's happening all over the United States. There's an immediate shift over from a domestic production to military production all over the country. With this, we're going to see automobile factories converted and start making tanks and airplanes. Henry Ford and the River Rouge plant will crank out bombers at an unprecedented rate. Also, new factories will be built in the country and in Evansville. Evansville's P-47 Thunderbolt factory, built by Republic Aviation, will break ground in April 1942. Women are going to be called on to fill jobs in this new industry. Men are fighting the war more and more. There is a labor shortage, and women are going to see doors open for them, and they're going to be encouraged to answer the call and to do their part. The picture in the lower left-hand corner is a picture of women working at Evansville Chrysler packaging 45 caliber ammunition, and they made over 1 billion bullets at Evansville's Chrysler plant during the war. We're also going to see demographic shifts. We're going to see people coming to Evansville. Evansville will boom, and urban centers in the north will experience this kind of boom. There's going to be a real shift in population from rural areas into urban centers, and from the south towards the north. A lot of people will be coming to these places to work and living in outlying areas as well. Evansville would see people coming in every day to work at the war industry, and they would carpool from New Harmony and Carmi and down in Kentucky and Rockport, and so outlying communities, people were still living in those but coming to these urban centers as well. Roosevelt wants America to be the arsenal for democracy, or the arsenal of democracy. We are going to just outproduce the Germans and the Japanese. America, because of our location and our protection of the 2 oceans, comes out of the war with our industry supercharged, not destroyed like the industrial base in Europe and in Asia. We build factories and grow our factories, and we lay the foundation for unprecedented post-war growth in the late 40s, 50s, and 60s. We turn out twice as many goods as the Germans and Japanese. As we sink a Japanese aircraft carrier, they can't replace it, and we're building aircraft carriers, destroyers, battleships, planes, submarines at a rate that the Germans and the Japanese can't even imagine trying to keep up with. We have a lot of natural resources, and this is going to be a real benefit for us. Scarce goods are going to start being rationed by the summer of 1942. The American people will be called on to do their part to turn in and collect scrap metal, scrap rubber, to collect grease, from the kitchens. The students at Wrights will be taken out, and they will collect milkweed pods, and the inside of the milkweed pod will be used to fill life jackets for sailors. The American people are called on in all sorts of ways to do their part, and one of the main things that they're called on to do is to conserve these scarce resources. Tires are rationed, gasoline is rationed, there's a national speed limit of 35 miles an hour to conserve tires. So the American people are going to do all kinds of things to be part of this war effort. We're going to see the beginning of this real boom of the middle class in World War II as well. The income of the lowest paid workers is going to really increase. There's going to be a lot of job opportunities in manufacturing for low paid workers, low skilled workers. They will get education, they will get skills, they will get night classes, they will get on the job training, and this is really going to lift up the bottom tier of workers and bring them a lot closer to the middle class. Income taxes started to affect many more people, and they started taking money out of people's paychecks. And prior to World War II, income taxes, when the 16th Amendment was ratified, the income tax was really something that applied to the rich, and with the growing middle class, more people will be affected by the income taxes. Also, we're going to see in this time period, a lot of people are saving money. People have good jobs. They have more money than they've had in a decade. They've got a more stable income. And with this higher income and prosperity, there's also less ability to spend it because of shortages, because of shortages in building supplies and shortages in metal, and the car industry being converted to a war industry. People can't go buy a new car or build a new house during World War II, so they're forced to put that money away because they can't spend it. And this is really going to lay the base for this post-war prosperity we see. After the war, people are going to have money, and there's just going to be an explosion of consumer goods, of housing, and a real ballooning of the standard of living in the middle class after World War II. Some of Evansville's most notable contributions: the top picture, the Republic Aviation plant out on Highway 41 where Whirlpool used to be, builds P-47 Thunderbolts. The picture on the right is the famous LST shipyards, and what most people think of when they think of Evansville war production, a 40-acre shipyard that's created to build these landing ship tanks, ships that are about as long as a football field, that are sort of like the semi-trucks of the sea. They carry tanks, jeeps, diesel fuel, all kinds of equipment, and they can land on the beach, open the front bow doors, and offload right onto the beach. So an ocean-going vessel that can pull up on a beach and offload its cargo. And then the bottom picture is another picture from Chrysler. Chrysler's sort of the forgotten industry in Evansville sometimes because airplanes and ships are big and impressive. But Chrysler's contribution was no less important. It made a whole lot of little bullets, 45 caliber bullets that would have been shot in pistols carried by the soldiers in World War II. With all the people coming to Evansville, there's going to be a real housing shortage. Fulton Square out on Fulton Avenue close to Cedar Hall Elementary School is one attempt to try to meet this shortage. We're going to see migrations all over the country, migrations from people going from the rural areas to the urban areas, and we're also going to see people more early marriages and increased birth rates, people getting married before they go off to war. And then we're also going to see social problems, because with fathers away and mothers working more and more outside of the home, there's going to be problems with kids. Juvenile delinquency will rise. Who takes care of the children? There's going to be housing shortages, and this is going to cause turmoil in families. More divorces will be part of World War II. And I think part of that stems from women having more opportunities to go outside the home and get work, but also with that paycheck comes some freedom. And you're not, and if a woman is in a bad marriage, or in a marriage that doesn't make her happy, she has more ability to leave and take care of herself because of the opportunities afforded to women in war industry. Women are going to be called on in many ways to do their part, and these two posters have become sort of iconic from World War II. The top poster you'll see used in all different kinds of ways and with different slogans and faces on it, but this image of Rosie the Riveter going to work is going to last after World War II, and is really going to change the way women see themselves and what their place is in this industrialized America. Some women will quietly and happily go back home after the war, but some like the freedom that they have found, and they want to continue that. Women's income will increase during the war by 50%, and African Americans are going to see more opportunities in industry as well. The Fair Employment Practices Commission will be created to ensure equal opportunities in war industry. All of these gains come with some limits, though, obviously. America is still racist, and there's still segregation. We are going to see a huge surge in migration from the rural South to the urban North, but in the North, the African American workers will still face discrimination, segregation, and some of the jobs in the war industry won't be open to them. But this wartime experience will lay the groundwork for the civil rights movement, and we'll talk a lot about that after the war. But African Americans who come back from World War II and African Americans who work in war industry during World War II will see their role change, and they will demand more of the American dream as well. Mexican Americans are gonna take urban factory jobs as well, especially in the Southwest and in the West. And then this takes us to the Japanese Americans, and probably the ugliest legacy of World War II. Executive Order 9066 is going to be issued by Franklin Roosevelt, and it's going to allow for the military to create zones and then exclude people deemed to be a threat from those zones. The people who are deemed to be a threat in the largest number are Japanese Americans, or Japanese Americans who maybe are resident aliens or are immigrants but not American citizens, and even their children who are born here who are citizens. The entire Pacific coast is going to be deemed to be a military zone, and Japanese people will be excluded from that zone, which will mean they will be forcibly put into internment camps. These camps kind of look like military barracks. They have fences around them. The people can't leave, so they're sort of like they're put in jail, and it's a detention center where they have to go and stay until the war is over. Imagine being told with 1 or 2 weeks notice that you have to take care of all of your financial obligations and report with a suitcase at the bus station to go away for an undetermined amount of time. You can only take what you can carry. People lost homes, their cars, their businesses. When you have to sell everything you own in a 2-week period, you will take whatever you can get for that, and that is going to be below market value. So along with losing their freedom, they also lost a lot of property. Now you might say this is unconstitutional because we have the right to due process, and unfortunately the Supreme Court disagreed with you in the 1940s and said that it was constitutional in the case of Korematsu versus the United States. So over the course of the war, 120,000 Japanese were moved to these detention camps. And in 1944, the Supreme Court rejected an appeal for release. And in 1988, Congress voted to give a payment to survivors from the Japanese internment, $1.2 billion. It ended up being, I believe, a little over $20,000 a person for property losses and freedom losses for these people, the survivors of the internment. Not all went quietly, and the person who is sort of the poster child for resistance of this is Fred Korematsu. Fred Korematsu was engaged to a non-Japanese American, and he did not want to go to the camp. In fact, he planned to leave California and get out of the military zone. So he didn't report when he was supposed to the evacuation center. But before he could leave California, he was arrested. And he challenged this arrest and his internment, and he became the person that fought this all the way to the Supreme Court in 1944. The case was Korematsu versus the United States. And in Korematsu versus the United States, in a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court said that the detention of Fred Korematsu was legal, and the detention of the Japanese Americans was legal because it was a time of war and it was a wartime necessity. Again, not one of the high points in American court history, but Fred Korematsu and the Japanese Americans would eventually receive their apologies from the government, and Korematsu would be honored by President Clinton in 1998. So that kind of covers what we would have talked about in class had we been there today. I hope you take 20 minutes or whatever this took to watch it. And when we come back on, hopefully when I see you on Wednesday next week, we will cover the chapter 23, pages 706 to 713. So be sure that you've read that, 706 to 713, and we might even have a reading quiz. Have fun, have a good weekend, be safe. We'll see you guys next week.